What's happening, everybody? Justin, Bridgewater's finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, fueled as always by the incredible folks at NerdTees, and welcome to hopefully lucky, week number 17 of my weekly CFL football pick show for the 2023 CFL season. Mixed results for me in week 16 of CFL action. I was even money across the board at 6-6. Even money straight up. Only 1-3 against the spread, and I've really been struggling against the spread lately. But man, have my total picks ever made a roaring comeback here in the last few weeks. It was 3-1 on the totals last week. Now just 15 games under 500, and you think about that, that's a huge number. But, I mean, compared to where I was 4 weeks ago, is honestly it's quite a bit of improvement. 6-6 even money, still 10 games underwater on the season, but I've got 17, 18, 19, 20, and 21. So I've got 5 weeks left to go. And yes, I will be making picks on Twitter. They will count towards my overall record for the couple of weeks that I am gone in Portugal, like I mentioned on last week's episode. The picks will still be on Twitter. They will still count towards everything. And I've still got some room here. I got some runway that I can get this thing back to 500 before the end of the season. Let's do this. Respectable effort in week 16 in CFL fantasy as well, bringing in 85.7 points. Was just outside the top 1750 overall in the game and just inside the top 300 in Derek Taylor's league. On the season, now 1,545.7 points, good for just inside the top 550 at 547, and just outside the top 80 overall at number 82 in Derek Taylor's league. It's been a successful season in fantasy. We want to keep this going for the last few weeks of this season. My MOP from week 16, Calgary wide receiver Reggie Begelton. I slipped him in there in my flex, and he rewarded me with 13 catches for $109 and a receiving touchdown, 29.9 points. If only I'd made him my captain, but didn't quite work out that way. Still a great performance for Reggie. We, of course, have a 4-game slate in Week 17 action, and it kicks off in Winnipeg with the Toronto Argos visiting the Bombers. I mean, this has to be everybody's Grey Cup preview at this point. Very excited for this one. Bombers coming into that game off of their bye. The Riders, on the tail end of back-to-back road games, travel to BC to take on the Lions. Montreal, on the tail end of back-to-back road games, travels to the nation's capital to take on the REDBLACKS in Ottawa. And Hamilton plays host to the Calgary Stampeders to close the week. Against the spread, favorites had a big bounce back last week, going 3-1 against the spread, but taking the points, still slightly favored over the last 30 days at about 58%. Over the last 4 weeks, if we take a look at quarterback performances, specifically touchdown and interception ratios, 52 touchdowns to 33 interceptions for quarterbacks, about 1.6 to 1. So less than 2 to 1. DBs and defenses are still thriving, even though we're still kind of in the waning days of #overseason. But that was then, this is now. Let's go to Winnipeg to kick things off. The Bombers playing host to a Toronto Argos team that showed absolutely no signs of letting up in a whole team win last week against the Ticats, sweeping the season series against Hamilton. But Chad Kelly was a little sloppy in that game, wasn't he? Threw a couple of picks, didn't exactly look his absolute best. That is definitely something they're going to want to clean up here in the last few weeks where the games really don't matter. Though that may not happen this week as Cameron Dukes is taking first-team quarterback reps in practice. We may see Chad Kelly get sit this week. And just so we're clear on that, that's not a punitive measure in any way. Not just you threw 2 interceptions even though we're 12-1, so no, off to the bench you go. Like, no, nothing like that. But, I mean, again, these games don't really matter for the Argos, so it's a matter of keeping everybody healthy. To that end, they basically healthy scratched A.J. Ouellette last week. Now, they say that both Ouellette and Andrew Harris are on the 6-game injured list. It was 100% a healthy scratch, which is clearly a sign of things to come because that looks like what they're going to do with Chad Kelly this week as well. Deonta McMahon drawing the start in the backfield for the Argos, touched the ball 15 times for 69 all-purpose yards. Free Daniel Adeboboye. What does Daniel Adeboboye have to do to carry the rock for the Argos? But the defensive effort was massive for the Argos in that game. Aside from giving up 156 yards receiving on 9 catches to Keandre Smith, of all receivers, this was a defensive gem. They held James Butler to 32 rush yards on 13 carries. They did give up 334 passing yards to Taylor Powell, and again, that secondary has had struggles all season long, but only 1 touchdown pass. They picked him off twice, part of 5 total takeaways for the defense. They also held Hamilton to under 35% on second down. On Winnipeg's side, the Bombers come off the bye having clinched a playoff spot. They're 10-4, but so are the BC Lions. They are right there. This is still a dogfight that they should win, but it is still a dogfight with the Lions for the West Division crown and the bye to the West Final. In Week 15, the Bombers dropped a 6-point decision in Hamilton to the Ticats, a game in which they spotted the Ticats the first 10 points of the game and allowed 160 rush yards and 2 rushing touchdowns on 30 carries to the Ticats as a team. On the offensive side, Zach Collaros hucking up 3 interceptions in that game, and they only ran the ball for 93 yards on 15 carries. An uncharacteristic performance, a bit of an egg for the Bombers. However, they've had a couple of those hiccups this season. They've had a couple of them. Obviously, they've lost 4 games. Every loss has felt like just that. It's felt like a hiccup. And every loss has been then swiftly followed up by at least a 2-possession win, if not more. But this, obviously, Grey Cup preview, like I mentioned, will be the stiffest of those tests for the Bombers coming off of a loss. Listen, I don't dislike Cameron Dukes in the least, but he ain't Chad Kelly. We all know that. So if it's Cameron Dukes and if it's a backfield tandem of McMahon and Adeboboye again, if we don't see AJ Ouellette, if we don't see Andrew Harris, if we don't see Chad Kelly, yes, this Argos defense is capable of putting up gems, but we also know you can throw on this Argos defense all day long. So with Winnipeg coming off of a bye and the Bombers so good at home, I just don't see any way that you don't roll with the Bombers this week. This is exactly what I'm going to do. I'm taking Winnipeg at home to get a big win over the Argos. Obviously, the Argos are also trying to kind of keep their cards close to their chest. They don't want to show the Bombers everything that they will probably show them come Grey Cup time. So let's take the Bombers in this matchup, but not matchup. Bombers get the win. On the line, Winnipeg is laying a full touchdown against the spread at -7. I'm comfortable laying those points because, again, you can score points on the Argos, and if the Argos are not going to be at their fullest offensively, you're not going to see them get to 30 points against this Bombers defense. So let's take the -7 on Winnipeg. Total in this game, 49 points. I'm still going to take the over here because I do think the Bombers comfortably get into the 30s in this game. And if that's the case, Toronto doesn't even have to get to 20 to hit the over here. So let's go over 49 points in Winnipeg, Toronto. I'm going to go like 34-18, like nearly a double up here. I think Winnipeg flexes their offensive muscles to show like, hey, this is what we're capable of. See you in Grey Cup Sunday. And I really can't wait to watch this game, especially to see who the Argos have out there and who they don't. Let's go to BC now, where again the Lions will be playing host to the Saskatchewan Roughriders. And for Saskatchewan, a miracle comeback attempt falling just short last week. The Riders dropping a critically important game in Ottawa, a game they really kind of needed, and I think towards the end of the season, you're going to see how badly they needed a game like this. The defense coughing up 193 yards rushing on 29 carries, and the team takes 123 yards on 11 penalties. They're just lucky, and look, they need to put both Calgary and Edmonton on their Christmas card lists, because they're very fortunate that both of the Alberta teams lost. Because think about it this way, Riders lose that game, Calgary wins and Edmonton wins. Now all of a sudden both of those teams are at 5 wins. The Riders are at 6, and it's close. And it's like, and you got to start sweating the teams that are behind you. They're just so fortunate that both the Alberta teams lost and they still have that 4-point cushion. Most of the offense for the Riders was at least serviceable in that game last week. Dolegala had 294 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, did throw 2 picks, but that's at least serviceable. You can do something with that performance. Frankie Hickson in a spot start over Jamal Morrow, touched the ball 11 times, turned it into 83 all-purpose yards. That's a serviceable performance from your starting running back. They had 4 different receivers who had at least 3 catches and at least 50 yards. That's a serviceable performance in the pass game, except for the fact that they gave the ball away 5 times and took 5 quarterback sacks. And again, we go right back to the defense gave up 193 yards rushing. And even though that 193 yards means it's a slight improvement over the 211 that they've been averaging giving up over the previous 3 games, that kind of performance is not going to beat anybody from a run defense perspective. And absolutely no one in this league is scared to run on the Riders right now, even a team like BC who barely runs the ball. Speaking of BC, the Lions ride a 21-point first quarter to a 3rd straight win for BC, despite allowing 25 points or more for the 5th straight game and the 6th time in their last 7. However, they've counteracted that by scoring at least 29 in 5 of the last 6. I talk about this being a team that doesn't run the ball very much or particularly well, but Taquan Mazzell really broke out of his yardage funk last week, going for $112 on 16 carries. He found pay dirt twice. It was his first 100-yard game since July, so that's a big deal for him. He's also got 9 catches over his last 2 games. So again, more of Taquan Mazzell in the pass game, please and thank you. It wasn't even all gloom and doom for the Lions defense, which has been much maligned over the last little while. They did hold Trey Ford to just 225 all-purpose yards. That was a big part of the fact that the Elks were held to just 272 all-purpose yards as a team, but wild inefficiency woes continuing for the BC Lions, putting up just a 10.7 mark in defensive efficiency. So the yardage was there, but they gave up way too many points for the yardage that they gave up. Listen, when you're in a must-win game, I find it very hard to then pick with you the next week when you drop the ball as hard as I feel like the Riders dropped the ball in that game. And again, it was so much, you can basically hang the vast majority of it on a little bit of lack of discipline and the run defense. Like they can't stop anybody. They can't stop anybody on the ground. They have the big fundamental flaw on the defensive side over a span of a lot of games, and BC's going to take full advantage of that. Taquan Mazzell is feeling himself after that performance last week. Give me the BC Lions at home, especially where the Riders are on the tail end of back-to-back road games where they have not found a ton of success this year. I think they're only 2-5 on the road. So BC Lions get the win at BC Place over the Riders. Against the spread, the Lions are laying double digits. It's -10. Some places you might get this at a 9.5, but the vast majority I'm seeing 10s, even a couple of 10.5s. It's tough to lay this many points on a woefully inefficient defense, but I think I have to. I don't know what I'm going to get from the Riders on the offensive side. I know there are players in there who are going to have good performances. I expect a big performance out of Kyan Schaefer-Baker in particular for the Riders, but I don't know if it's going to be Morrow or Hickson. Feels like it's going to be Hickson at this point. I'm not 100% sure which Jake Dolegala is going to show up. BC plays much better at home. I think I got to lay the 10 points. I don't feel super comfortable about it because it's double digits. But look, one team is fighting for the division. One team is trying to hang on but has a little bit of a buffer room on 2 teams, one of which is on a bye this week. So I don't feel like the Riders need to win this game as badly as they needed to win the game last week. But I think I'm going to lay the 10 points here on BC. Total in the game set at 48.5. I think the Lions are on some crazy over streak. And again, the defense has been giving up a decent number of points. The offense has been scoring more. So let's take the over in this one. Over 48.5 points in BC Saskatchewan. Let's go like pretty similar to the last game, actually. I'm going to like double them up. 36-17. Let's go with that. Lions win. Lions cover the -10. Give me the over on the points. Halfway home in the Week 17 episode, and you know what that means, folks. It's time to pay homage to my great friends and sponsors at NerdTees. NerdTees.ca is where you need to go to find dozens and dozens of incredible loose leaf tea, estate coffee, and flavored coffee blends. Whatever your taste palette is, NerdTees.ca has got something for you. Just like this, my favorite and the only current flavored coffee blend that I have going through my rotation, chocolate hazelnut. It is so good, smells incredible, tastes fantastic. I'm not a hot coffee drinker, but I will drink this all day long. Nerdteas.ca. Promo code is BW Finest, and when you use that promo code, you're going to save 15% on everything that you buy from nerdteas.ca. You're also going to get free shipping in Canada on any order over $100, which is an excellent value. If you're one of my viewers from the US, you're going to get a great conversion rate on the US dollar. Nerdteas.ca, promo code BW Finest, save your 15%, get your free shipping, find yourself something to love, or find someone you love something to love. You can do it on nerdteas.ca. Off to the nation's capital we go as the Montreal Alouettes are in town visiting the REDBLACKS, and for Montreal, the Alouettes snapped their skid last week in Calgary, picking up a definitive 3-possession win where the defense bent but did not break, scoring critical plays and takeaways. 4 quarterback sacks for the Alouettes on defense and 4 takeaways. For the second week in a row, it was Tyson Philpott leading the way in the receiving game for Cody Fajardo and the Owls. 4 catches for 87 yards. But the biggest story here for the Alouettes on offense, the O-line allowed 0 quarterback sacks. Finally. I've been complaining about this all season long, and the O-line finally came up with a game where they could give Cody Fajardo a clean pocket. And when they did, look what happened. 5 receivers who caught at least 3 balls in that game for the Alouettes. Cody Fajardo is very good at running a spread offense involving multiple receivers, getting everybody involved in the offense when he's got time to do so. The O-line finally gave him a game where he had some time to do it. We saw some good results. And again, despite the fact that the Alouettes defense surrendered more pass yards, more rushing yards, and more first downs, they did hold Jake Maier to just a single passing touchdown, and they held the Stampeders to just 25% in the red zone. Only going 1 for 4 was Calgary in the red zone in that game. That wound up being the difference. If they broke there, this is a very competitive game. Calgary may have even come up with the win. In Ottawa, the REDBLACKS snapping their own skid at 7 straight losses, 5 by a single possession. So very, very close games, voodoo, wizardry, and BS against the REDBLACKS, but they snapped that skid, riding 296 all-purpose yards and 3 total touchdowns by the much maligned, by me at least, Dustin Crum. And honestly, Crum silenced me with that performance. His first passing touchdowns in a month, but it was his 3rd straight game of at least 230 yards passing. He put up over 10 yards per carry and a rush touchdown in the run game. It was a vintage Dustin Crum performance, if we can say that about a first-year player. But he shut me up. He absolutely shut me up. I believe he was the top-performing quarterback last week from Pro Football Focus. So big shout-out to Dustin Crum. He knew what he had to do. He went out there and he executed. I also want to give a shout out on the defensive side to Bryce Carter. He led the way on defense for the REDBLACKS. 3 quarterback sacks, part of 5 overall as a team for the REDBLACKS last week, plus a recovered fumble, part of 3 overall recovered fumbles for the REDBLACKS on defense. Big splash plays for them, helping lead them to a win. However, boy, are the REDBLACKS ever the walking wounded right now. Their injury list looks like a CVS receipt. Or to use a Canadian example, you know the receipts you get from like Winners where they're advertising like 12 things at the bottom of it? Something like that. As I mentioned, Montreal on the tail end of back-to-back road games here, and Vegas seems to think this is going to be a pretty darn close matchup. Ottawa's taking +2 as a marginal home dog, and that really made me want to go with them. It really, really did. I think these two teams are very close to each other, and like this still has the potential that it could be a playoff matchup, although Ottawa's kind of fighting for their life at this point. They're barely hanging on in context of the East Division race. Boy, this is a real tough one, but this feels to me, as much as it's a game that Ottawa can't afford to lose, I don't think Montreal can afford to lose this game either. Because if they do, Hamilton's got a winnable game that we're just about to talk about, and now all of a sudden we're talking about a tie there for Montreal and Hamilton and a real dogfight as to who gets home field advantage in the playoffs. This is an important game for the Alouettes. I don't feel like it's one that they can afford to lose. I'm going to take the Alouettes on the road here to get the win over Ottawa. Critical game for them. I like Montreal. So, obviously, since I'm taking Montreal to win, they're a 2-point favorite. It's a small price to pay. Let's lay the -2 on the Alouettes. Total in this game set at 47, and this feels like one of those situational unders. These are not two explosive offenses. They're teams that are more so lately predicated on a bend but don't break defense. So let's take the under in this game. Under 47 points in Montreal, Ottawa. I'm going to go like a 24-20 final. Very close game. I genuinely think this game could go either way. Maybe it would have been smart of me to take those couple of points, but I'm going to go 24-20 Alouettes. Als win, Als cover, and give me the under on the points. And the final game this week is the Calgary Stampeders traveling to Hamilton to take on the Ticats, two teams who were on the unhappy side of par last week, but one in a much different context than the other. So for the Calgary Stampeders, fait accompli. I know that's going to make people in Alberta mad that I used French, but I think this is done. I think this is done for the Stamps this year. Reggie Begelton is a monster. Other than that, you got a bunch of guys that are just kind of there. And they only muster 11 points in a must-win, can't-afford-to-lose game. And they had to know that that was a must-win, can't-afford-to-lose game, falling to just 2-5 at home in 2023. I just think this is done. Consistency was not found for the Stampeders at any point this season, as this effort comes off the heels of 3 straight games where they had scored at least 23 plus points, which is nice. But that came off the heels of 3 straight games where they had scored less than 20. So this has been the Calgary Stampeders season. It's been peak and valley. It's been up and down. There's been no leveling out of play. There's been no consistency, just short, streaky bursts. The Stampeders now suffering their 6th consecutive game where they have failed to have a 100-yard rusher. And no, it's not easy to have a 100-yard rusher. And it's far from the only reason that they've been losing games. But with Kadeem Carey and Dedrick Mills and Peyton Logan, everybody seems to forget about Peyton Logan. They've got 3 good running backs in that backfield. That's well short of the goal that they've gone 6 consecutive games without somebody busting out for a 100-yard game. In Hamilton, look, there's been sort of the story of Hamilton's season. The Ticats have been unable to solve their Toronto problem all year long, suffering their 4th loss to the Argos this year, all by at least 13 points, which means they did not cover a single time against the spread either. Now, those spreads have ranged from 2.5-point favorites at the beginning of the season to as many as 10.5-point dogs, but they lost all 4 of those games. They didn't cover any of them against the spread either. I think Hamilton is like 6-4 against every other team this year that's not the Toronto Argos. That loss last week coming despite Taylor Powell's best efforts, 353 all-purpose yards. Yes, he did throw 2 interceptions, but it was not a bad game for Powell. They just gained no traction in the run game as a team, only 59 yards on 19 carries. No solid quarterback pressure as well against what is admittedly the elite offensive line in this league. And 5 giveaways in that game, including 3 of them on downs. So part of that is coaching. Part of that is we went for it on 3rd down a bunch and failed 3 times. So part of that is coaching. Part of that is situational. I understand that obviously they were trailing. They had to try to forge a comeback here. Let's go for it on 4th. But if it's not happening, it's not happening. Take your chances and force the other team to beat you. Despite that loss, the Ticats are still in control of their own destiny here playoffs-wise. They have a 4-point edge on the REDBLACKS, as well as Calgary and Edmonton in any crossover scenarios. But we may want to think twice about catching Montreal. So obviously Montreal is in the lead right now in the East Division to host the East semifinal. The Ticats are only 2-5 at home this year. They have not played well in their home building. Montreal is under 500, I believe, at home this year. The Ticats have played better on the road than they have at home. So they might want to think twice about whether or not they want to host that game. That's, of course, just me galaxy braining things. So I'm fading the Stampeders the rest of the season. So any Stamps fans that are out there, I'm sorry. You have to understand, I'm getting off of this train. As far as I'm concerned, the Stamps don't have anything left to play for. I don't think they're going to catch the Riders. They might get overtaken by the Elks. Again, the Elks are on bye this week. I don't think they go to Hamilton and beat Hamilton, even though Hamilton has struggled so much at home this year. Hamilton is still in control of their own destiny. Calgary is not. I'm going to take the Ticats here to get this win, a marginal home favorite in Hamilton. Let's take the Ticats to beat the Stamps. On the line, this is how marginal it is. Hamilton's only laying -1.5. I like them to win. It's a small price to pay. Let's lay that -1.5. Total in the game set at 47.5, and I'm going with another situational under here. I don't fully trust either one of these offenses. I don't fully trust either one of the defenses either, but I just gut feeling about this one, it stays under the number. I think it's relatively close, but I'm going to take the under here. Under 47.5 in Hamilton, Calgary. Let's go 26-17 in favor of the Ticats. Ticats win, Ticats cover, and give me the under on the points. There you go, folks. The picks are in for Week 17 in the CFL. Let's go over them here with you one more time. I got the Winnipeg Blue Bombers off the bye, beating a likely Chad Kelly-less Toronto Argos team 34-18, laying -7 on Winnipeg, taking over on the 49-point total. I got the BC Lions at home beating the Saskatchewan Roughriders by a score of 36-17, laying -10 on the BC Lions. Game goes over the 48.5-point total. I got the Montreal Alouettes on the road in Ottawa, beating the REDBLACKS by a final score of 24-20, laying the -2 on the Alouettes in a game that stays under 47 points. And in Hamilton, I've got the Ticats beating the Calgary Stampeders 26-17. Ticats cover -1.5 and give me the under on the 47.5-point total. It is Wednesday, my dudes, and you know what that means. We can talk about some CFL fantasy. My roster for Week 17 in CFL fantasy is right in front of your eyes right now, and we are stacking ourselves some Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Zach Collaros is my quarterback, will be my captain at $13,500. I think he bounces back against a very beatable Argos secondary. We're stacking him with Brady Oliveira at the running back position. I think the Argos run defense is still pretty good, but again, who knows who's going to be playing and who isn't. And we're also grabbing Kenny Lawler, who is on a bit of a touchdown streak here, and is only $9,500. He's cheaper than a couple of the other options there for the Bombers, so we're going to go with Kenny Lawler there. I'm also going to grab the Bombers on defense. Cameron Dukes, if he gets the start, they're down their top 2 running backs as well, or intentionally down their top 2 running backs. We're going to roll with the Bombers on defense at $10,000. Taquan Mazzell, I'm going to take him at $9,500 at my second running back position, see if he can build off that incredible performance from last week. And I mentioned Kyan Schaefer-Baker, $4,700. A really nice little value play there. I think obviously the big dogs in the Riders receiving game gets so much attention. I think it's going to open up a lot of options here for KSB. And that allowed me to grab Terry Godwin at the flex position for the Ticats, $9,000. I think Tim White draws so much attention from the defenses. I think Godwin is going to have all kinds of room to run in the middle of the field. So let's grab him at flex for $9,000. There you go, folks. Week 17 episode is now in the books. Thank you so much for watching. Once again, we will have a Week 18 episode. Weeks 19 and 20 will not be here, as I will be across the pond in Portugal enjoying my vacation. That's it for me, Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, fueled as always by the incredible folks at NerdTees. Enjoy the games in Week 17. This CFL season is winding itself down. The playoffs will be here before we know it. Enjoy the games, and we'll see you again in Week 18.